So this week's Parshas Chukas. Poradumo, chukim chukakti, gzeres gozarti, ve'ein lechu reshus laharer achareihem. And we touch upon the big sugya of tamei HaMitzvos. Do we understand what the mitzvahs are about? And in the days of the Rishonim, there was a huge machlokes between the Rambam and the Rashba. The Rambam heads a big machna of Rishonim that dealt with Tamei HaMitzvos and tried to explain the reasoning of Taryag Mitzvahs Shebetoiro. And Chelek Gimel and Moire Nevuchim is almost entirely dedicated to Tamei HaMitzvos. Every one of you probably is familiar with Sefer HaChinuch, a magnificent Sefer on Taryag Mitzvahs, and in each and every one of the Taryag Mitzvahs, Sefer HaChinuch explains Mishroshei HaMitzvah, what the mitzvah is about. And the Rashba in his Tshuva says, he quotes Chazal in Medrash, Ma ichpas leila kodesh bochu, ben shoichet men hatzaver o shoichet men ha'oiref, Loi nitnu ha-mitzvahs elo letzarev behenas habriyas. And the Rashba says, Taryag mitzvahs is all about servitude. We serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu whether we understand or not. We said Nasa before we heard Nishma, and we took upon ourselves to be Mekayim mitzvahs even though we didn't even know what they are about. So this is a big machlokes about Tamei HaMitzvos. Comes along the Bach. And the Bach is in two sources, number 2 and number 3 on our sheet. Number 2 regarding tzitzis, number 3 regarding mitzvah sukkah. And the Bach says, when you sit in the sukkah, besides the general kavona of mitzvah sichas kavona, and you need to have kavona to be makayim a mitzvah, by sukkah you need to have a specific and additional kavona. Laman yedu derosechem ki besukkos shafti es b'nei Yisrael. I need to bear that in mind. And the Bach says the same by tzitzis. Ure isem oisoi is zachartem es kol mitzvahs Hashem. And the same regarding tefillin. Laman tia teres Hashem beficha. And the Bach says by these 3 mitzvahs you need to have a specific and additional kavanah. Leman tizkeru v'asisem es kol mitzvos Hashem, leman yedu derosechem, leman tiyeh teres Hashem beficha. So the Bach says there are 3 mitzvahs in which the Torah tells us what is the reasoning, what is the motive, and by these mitzvahs you need to bear that in mind. And there's a machlokes Mishnah Brura and Bekuri Yankov, whether this kavon is ma'akav b'di'evid or it's only lechatchila. The Mishnah Brura Simachofei says it's lechatchila. The Bekuri Yankov, anybody know who was the Bekuri Yankov? Who was the Bekuri Yankov? Does anybody know? So I've been giving shiurim in this yeshiva for many years. I don't remember how many years, and I asked her about 500 times, does anybody know who is who? I think by now you should know all the names of all the Achonim. The Bekuri Yankov was the Oruch Lener. Now you don't know 2 things. So who was the Oruch Lener? Rabbi Yankov Ettlinger, who was one of the greatest Gedolim in Germany, going back 160 years. And the Bekuri Yankov says that according to the Bach, this kavona is ma'akav. And if you didn't bear in mind when you put on your tzitzis, Laman tizkeru v'asisem es kol mitzvos Hashem, you were not yoyse. So I always wondered, and there's a tshuva in Minchas Osher, Baruch Hashem, I'm a Baal Simcha, just a week ago, Shar Tshuvas Minchas Osher Chelik Dalet came out. So this is a big simcha for me every time a new sefer comes out. And we've been waiting for the sefer almost 10 years. And I said so many times, Bekorev Mamish, but Baruch Hashem, the sefer came out. So in Minchas Osher Chelik Beis, I wondered, Hasidim say a l'shem yichud before tzitzis and before tefillin, and we don't mention what the Bach says. In the l'shem yichud for tefillin, we don't say leman tiyes Hashem beficha, and in the l'shem yichud for tzitzis, we don't say leman tizkeru v'asisem es kol mitzvos Hashem. So this is an additional realm of kavanah, and the Bekuri Yankov wants to explain, according to the Bach, Rabban Gamliel, source number one. Rabban Gamliel אומר, כל שלו יום שלושה דברים האלה בפסח לא יוצא ידי חבוסי. פסח מצה ומורוי. פסח זה שעוני אוכלם, על שום מה, על שום שפסח המקום על אבות אבינו. And the Bakuri Yanko says, that's Rabban Gamliel. Pesach, matzah, and moror. Besides Mr. Seches Goni, you need to bear in mind why we eat Pesach, why we eat matzah, why we eat moror. However, in Minchas Oshan I argued, Rabban Gamliel is not about kavona, it's about dibur. Kol shaloi omar. Has nothing to do with the bach. Kol shaloi omar. So when Rabban Gamliel says, Kol shaloi omar shloishe dvorim eila lo yotze yedei chavosa, what does he mean? Lo yotze yedei chavosa, in which mitzvah? What does it mean, lo yotze yedei chavosa? To me it is clear, lo yotze yedei chavosa b'mitzvah sipu yetzias mitzrayim. He doesn't mean to say you're not yotze pesach matzah imoror. And the chiddush of Rabban Gamliel is that in the context of the mitzvah of Sipu Yetzias Mitzrayim, you also need to explain to your children and to whoever sits at the table the kesher between the three mitzvahs and the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. That is part of the mitzvah of Sipu Yetzias Mitzrayim. It has nothing to do with being Yoitze Pesach Matzah Imoror. You're Yoitze Pesach Matzah Imoror regardless. Rabban Gamliel is not about kavana, it's about sipur. And that is why Rabban Gamliel says, Kol shaloi omar. The Bach, it didn't even occur to the Bach that by tzitzis, tefillin, and sukkah you need to say, you don't need to say anything. The Bach talks about kavana, Rabban Gamliel talks about dibur. V'loi korev ze el ze kol halayla. Kol halayla means the first night of Pesach. Like Korev Zel Ze Kol Halayla. It's nothing to do. Rabban Gamliel is talking about Sipu Yetzias Mitzrayim. And the Bach talks about mitzvah, tzitzis, tefillin, and sukkah. However, there seem to be some Rishonim, mashma midevreim, that when Rabban Gamliel says La Yotze Yedei Chavosa, he really means La Yotze Yedei Chavis Pesach Matzah Moror. So, Melchames Hashem, the Ramban at the very beginning of Masechet Brochos, Shenina ki yoytze b'kol tzol yom gimel dvorim eile b'yisrael lo yotzei chavosei v'lo shei tzorech lachzeh v'lechel pesach matzah v'moroi. He talks about when Chazal say lo yotzo yedei chavosei. Does that necessarily mean even b'di'evet lo yotze yedei chavosei? Or it could mean lechatchila. So, the Ramban writes, Shaninu ki yoytze bo, kol shaloi omar gimel dvorim eile b'pesach, la yotze yedei chavosei, v'lo sheyehi tzorech lachzeh v'lechel pesach matzah v'moroi. It's only a lechatchila, but don't think that he wasn't yoytze and he needs to eat pesach matzah v'moroi again. So the Ramban seems to understand Kol shaloi omar yotze yedei chavosei is pesach matzah v'moroi. Kolbo. Kolbo is one of the great Rishonim Ashkenaz. We don't know exactly who wrote the Kolbo. It is one of the Rishonim. We don't know who was the Mechaber, but everybody quotes the Kolbo. Rabban Gamliel lo kol shaloi omar kloimer. Afar pi sheyochel pesach matzah moror lo yotze yedei chavosei bilti ba'amira u'behaggadah. So this seems to say you weren't yoytze pesach matzah v'moror. I don't think necessarily that's pshat, definitely not in the Ramban. I would understand the Ramban, lo sheyeh tzorech lachzor v'lechol pesach matzah v'moror kedei lekayim mitzvah sipu yetzias Mitzrayim. So Rabban Gamliel says, when you eat Pesach, you need to explain. When you eat matzah, you need to explain. You eat mori, you need to explain. The Ramban says that's just lechatchila. But if you didn't, you don't need to eat Pesach again in order to say Pesach zesha ono oichlem al shumah. You don't need to eat matzah again in order to say matzah zesha ono oichlem al shumah. So when the Ramban says it's only lechatchila, not b'di'evet, he is talking about mitzvah sipu yetzias Mitzrayim. And there would be a Haveman if you ate Pesach Matzah V'Morah without saying anything. You ate Pesach Matzah V'Morah, but you need to eat again Pesach Matzah V'Morah in order to explain why. But the Kolboy is a different lashon, and the Kolboy does seem to say, Rabbi Gamliel Oimer, Kloimer, Af al pi sheyochel Pesach Matzah V'Morah lo yotzi dechavos amira v'agoda. But even the Kolboy, one could say, you ate Pesach Matzah V'Morah, but that is not enough. You need to explain why you eat Pesach Matzah V'Morah. So to me, it seems to be very clear. This has nothing to do with the Bach. Rabbi Gamliel talks about Amira. The Bach talks about Machshava. But then the question would be, why don't we need to have Kavona by Pesach Matzah V'Morah? So why does the Bach write 3 mitzvahs and not 6? Why doesn't the Bach write, you're not Yoitza, Tzitzis, Tfilin, Sukkah, Pesach, Matzah, V'Morah, unless you bear in mind the Kavona, why we eat these, why we have these 6 mitzvahs. So it is clear that's not the Kavona of Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel is about Sipi Yitzias Mitzrayim, Rabbi Gamliel is about Dibur, the Bach is about Kavona. But why? So regarding Korban Pesach, my answer would be a very simple one. Pesach is not noyeg bisman hazeh. And the Bach comes to explain the tool. So, but what about Matzah Morah? Matzah Morah are noyeg bisman hazeh. So I want to be machadish something that to me seems to be Torah's emes. There's a difference between Tamei HaMitzvos and Tachlis HaMitzvos. There's a difference between reason and objective. Tamei HaMitzvos, we do never need to be mechaven. Mitzvah Sichas Kavona means you need to be mechaven, that you're performing a mitzvah. And we don't need to be mechaven what the mitzvah is about. But when the Torah says leman, that is the objective. That is the goal. The Torah says you put on tzitzis leman etiskeru, kedei lizkor. The Torah says you sit in sukkah leman yedu deraseichem, as to remember. So by Pesach, the Torah says, "Va'amartem zevach Pesach hu l'Shem sheposach al pischei b'nei Yisrael." That is about Amira. Va'amartem zevach Pesach hu l'Shem. It's not about Kavana. And the Amira is Sipi Yitzias Mitzrayim. It is only when the Torah says, what is the goal? What do we want to achieve with this mitzvah? And that is Laman Yedu Dorasechem, Laman Tizkeru. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, I want you to wear tzitzis, so you should remember. And if the Torah says, that is the objective, and the tachlis of mitzvah tzitzis, so to remember. And the tachlis of sukkah is Laman Yedu Dorasechem, that kavon is ma'akev. Tamei HaMitzvos are never ma'akev. And that is why only 3 mitzvahs. It is only by tzitzis, by tefillin and sukkah that the Torah says, what is the objective, what is the goal, where does this mitzvah need to take us? And that is leman. But by Pesach Matzah Mura, the Torah doesn't say leman. And therefore, that is Tamei HaMitzvos. Tamei HaMitzvos are never need to necessitate kavona, only when it is tachlitan shel mitzvahs. But I still have 2 kashas, and that is 2 psukim in Parshas Re'eh, 8 and 9 on our sheet. Lo toichel olav chumes shivas yomim toichel olav matzas lechamoini ki bechipozen yetzosa meyeretz Mitzrayim leman tizker Hashem tzeis chumei Yisrael kol yemei chayecho. So by mitzvahs matzah, the Torah does say, Leman tizker Hashem tzeischa mi'eretz Mitzrayim kol yemei chayecha. So why don't we need kavanah by mitzvahs matzah? Who has an answer, Rabbi Say? Who has an answer? And the answer is an extremely simple one. Who has an answer on this kasha? I ask, by achilas matzah, the Torah does say leman tizkor. So why is this kavanah not ma'akev? Let's read the posuk again. Lo yisoichel olav chometz, shivas yomam toichel olav matzah lechamoini. Is there a mitzvah matzah 7 days? Is there a mitzvah to eat matzah 7 days? No. The mitzvah matzah is another posuk in Parshas Boy, not in Parshas Re'eh. Be'erev toichlu matzahs. This posuk refers to the Isser of chometz. Lo yiseichel olav chometz, shivas yom toichel olav matzah, and not chometz. There is no mitzvah to eat matzah 7 days. So leman tizkor refers to the Isser of achilas chometz. And by a lav, there never is a concept of kavanah. A lav is sheva al taisa. When exactly do we need to have kavanah? So leman tizkor Hashem tzeischa mi'eretz Mitzrayim is not about mitzvahs matzah. Are you aware that someone says there's a mitzvah to eat matzah 7 days? Who is that? What? The Gra. It's a reshus, but it's still a mitzvah. It's not a chiyuv. So according to the Gaon, if you want to be makayim the mitzvah of matzah kol shiva, yes, you need to have kavanah. But the bach, you don't have a kash on the bach. The bach is not meshubet to the Gra. The Gra is a das yochid. None of the Rishonim says this. So, but if you want to be makayim, if you want to combine the Gra with the bach, then yes. If you want to be makayim the mitzvahs asay shel reshus achilas matzah kol shiva, you need to bear in mind leman tizkor. I don't know. This posuk l'chayda refers to achilas chometz, but it does say. And the Ibn Eslan, this posuk says, it is about achilas matzah b'leil aleph. But this posuk lamantis Hashem says Chami'etzim Mitzrayim is about Schis Yetzias Mitzrayim every day and every night. It's b'chlal is not about matzah in Pesach. Lamantis Koil Hashem says Chami'etzim Mitzrayim Zochar es Yom Hazeh. That is the posuk of Leila Seder. Lamantis Koil is every day and every night. That is Benazai, Ad Shedor She Benazai, Rebbe Loza Benazari in Psochim and in the Godesh of Pesach. And therefore, this is not really a kasha. But then we have another posik, also in Parshas Re'eh, and that is Achilas Matzah Sheni. V'ochalta lefnei Hashem lekecha b'mokom asher yivcha l'shakan sh'maisha matzah degonecho, tirosh v'yitzorecha v'choyes v'chozecho, leman tilmad liyiros Hashem lekecha kol hayomim. So why doesn't the Bach write Matzah Sheni? I already answered this question before. Because the Torah doesn't write Matzah Sheni. The Torah is only about mitzvahs ala noyeg bizman hazeh, and the Torah is about chutz la'aretz. So b'korav b'yameinu, sheyovoi Mashiach tzidkenu, and the Rambam will smile, and the Rambam will say, Misha torach b'yerev Shabbos yerechel b'Shabbos. I had this in mind, and I wrote the Mishnah Torah covering Kodshim and Taharas and everything, and the tour will be on Lachatz. What do I do now? There is so much that I didn't paskin, and everybody is knocking on my door, asking about Kodshim, about Taharas, about Zroim, and it'll take the tour. I assess about 3 months to update the tour. And we'll have another 2 volumes in the tour on Zroim and Kodshim and Taharas. And the Bach will also need to rush to update his Perish on the tour. And the new version of the Bach, it'll say that there are 4 mitzvahs in which you need to bear in mind, and otherwise you're not makayim the mitzvah, and that'll be Achilas Matzah Sheni b'Yushalayim. But maybe not. Because Tosis and Bava Basra Daf Chof Aleph explains this posuk, Leman tilmad liyiras Hashem Elokecho. Why is this posuk only by Maser Sheni and not about the Korbanos, not about Korban Pesach? Leman tilmad liyiro. And how exactly is Achilas Maser Sheni Yerushalayim supposed to bring Yiras Hashem? We understand how tzitzis reminds us Taryag mitzvahs. We understand sitting in a sukkah is Leman Yedu Derasechin Kibesikas Shavti. But what does Yiras Shamayim have to do with Maser Sheni? Tosfos in Bava Basra explains, and it's so logical. People are mafresh tumas amaisis all year round. And they accumulated a lot of Maser Sheni because Maser Sheni is 10% of your products. That's a lot. And you only go up to Yerushalayim 3 times a year. And they had no refrigeration. So after a day or 3 or 4, those fruit and vegetables will rot away and decompose. And that is why they were machalel, kedushas Maser Sheni, on money. So twice a year, before Sukkot and before Pesach, people had thousands of dollars of Muas Maser Sheni. And you go up to Yerushalayim, and then you need to buy food and drinks from all your Maser Sheni money. You cannot buy clothing. You cannot pay the train or an Uber with that money. All you could do is buy food. So they stayed a few weeks in Yerushalayim till they finished all that Maser Sheni money. And if you're going to spend time in Yerushalayim, and you're going to see the Koyanim Ba'avidosam, you're going to see Avodas HaMikdash B'Kedusha V'Tahara, Avhu Noisen Leiv, to be Oisig B'Torah and Yerushalayim. And that is why Leman tilmad liyiras Hashem Elokecho is not by Korban Pesach. By Korban Pesach, you come for 1 day and you're back home. Other Korbanos, you come for 1 day and you're back home. But Maser Sheni necessitates to stay in Yerushalayim for an extended period till you finish up all that money you accumulated. That's Kedushas Maser Sheni. And that is why only by Maser Sheni we have this Leman tilmad liyiras Hashem Elokecho. If you're going to spend time in Yerushalayim, what is there to do in Yerushalayim besides learn and daven and see the Heilige Kehanim and the Heilige Leviim and connect to Shevet Levi? So according to Tosfos, it is not actually eating Maser Sheni that is Leman tilmad liyiro, but Maser Sheni is an indirect cause to bring Avos Torah and Yerushalayim. And Leman tilmad liyiro is just about spending time in Yerushalayim. So once upon a time, people didn't have smartphones. So today, wherever you are in the world, you're going to waste your time with shtusim and play around with your smartphone. But once in the days of yore, you were far away from your business, you were far away from your store, you're in Yerushalayim. And all you have to do in Yerushalayim is Torah and Yerushalayim and looking at the Koyanim. And that is Leman tilmad liyiras Hashem Elokecho. So according to Tosfos, it's not like tzitzis, and not like tefillin, and not like sukkah, which kiyum HaMitzvah directly has an objective. It is not the achila. The achila of Maser Sheni is no different than the achila of other kodshim. It's not different than kodeshim kalim. It is about spending time in Yerushalayim, and that is why Leman tilmad liyiras Hashem Elokecho is totally different than Leman tizkeru kol mitzvos Hashem, Leman yedu derasechem, and Leman tiyeh toras Hashem beficha. So today we discussed the Chiddush of the Bach and a Yesoid Godel and Kavonas Bach, which I don't think. I think it's a emesa mahalach and an emesa understanding, and Baruch Hashem. So this week's parsha is about Torah Aduma, and Rashi brings Divrei Chazal. Chukim chukati, gzeres guzarti, ve'ein lechu reshus laharar achareim. In the introduction to Minchas Osher Nagodesh Shel Pesach, there's a short mama. The Medrash says, David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Yehi libi somem bechukecha. Chukecha is Loshen Rabim. Chukas HaPesach v'chukas HaPorah. And I ask, What is the common denominator between Chukas HaPesach and Chukas HaPorah? And my feeling is not because they have something in common, but rather because they have nothing in common and they're so different. They are so different. Two contrasts. Chukas HaPorah, ein lechu reshus laharer achareihem. Not only you can't ask, don't even think. Chukim chukakti, gzeres guzarti, ve'ein lechu reshus laharer. Don't try to understand because you cannot understand. Because the mitzvahs are above and beyond the realm of your understanding. Ein lechu reshus laharer. And then when it comes to Pesach, not only do you need to think, you need to ask. And the simpleton, Eina Yodea Lishel. Your boy is sitting around the table and he's happy. He has no questions at all. And we go to the extreme to provoke him to ask questions. Oike mesa shulchan, machalken kloyes ve'egoizim, madbilim. And all this is, everybody should ask. And we encourage them, ask. So what's Darko Shel Torah? By Chukas HaPorah we say, shut up. Don't even think. And when it comes to Pesach, talk. Open your mouth. Why are you sitting like a klutz around the table? Talk. You have no questions? So my Darko Shel Torah. What is the answer? We learn the answer from the Akedah. Al tishlach yodcho al anar. Chazal say, Avraham Avinu puts down the machoiles. He turns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he says, Achshav afaresh sichosi. Rabbeinu Shalom. Now it's my turn to ask. Betchilo amartu li, ki v'yitzchak yorah chazorah. אחר כך אמרתי לי, הלאה שם לי אלו. ועכשיו אתה אומר לי, אל תשלח ידך אל הנער. Avraham asks two questions. But why didn't he ask question number one when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, הלאה שם לי אלו? Why didn't he stop there and then and say, Rabbeinu Shalom, I don't understand what's going on. You promised me, ki v'yitzchak yorah chazorah, and now you tell me to shecht him? But he didn't ask. When does he ask? When it's all over. When the Malach says, Al tishlach yodcho al anar. And I think it took a lot of courage from Avraham Avinu to ask, you said Helei Hashem liyolo, and now you say Al tishlach yodcho al anar. Avraham Avinu should have taken into account that Kodesh Baruch Hu might say, Avraham, you're right. Go ahead, shecht him. If I would be Avraham Avinu, I would break that knife immediately and throw it away, never to find again. And Avraham says, I don't understand. You told me, and now you're saying, but question number one, why didn't he ask when HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, when you need to do, it is not time to ask. And Avraham Avinu doesn't want to ask. He had a clear command of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shecht your son. And that is what he's going to do, whether he understands or not. I have a huge kasha. You promised ki v'yitzchak yikorah l'chozera. Now I have no questions. If this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do, I do it. It is only when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him no. Now he asks not one question, now he wants to understand. Stage 1 and stage 2. So when it is time to do, it's not time to ask. You ask only when there is no risk that your question will affect your Mesiras Nefesh and your understanding we need to do Devar Hashem. And that is what reconciles Chukas HaPesach and Chukas HaPorah. So Avraham Avinu does what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to do. He asked questions. Now is not the time to ask questions. Now is the time to do. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do, whether I understand or not. This is what I'm going to do. And that is the Bakosha of David HaMelech. ליבי שומר בחוקיך ובחוקס הפסח ובחוקס הפור. So by Matan Torah, Chazal say, B'shosh she'ekdim Yisur nasa lenishma yordu, samach riboy malachei Ashores v'elbishu lekol echad miyisrael shnei ksorim, echad keneged nasa v'echad keneged nishma. And I ask, but Chazal don't say B'shu she'omru Yisrael nasa v'nishma. They say B'shu she'hegdimu Yisrael nasa v'nishma. There was only one Hagdama. So why two ksorim for one Hagdama? If Chazal would say, B'shosha Omri Yisroel Nasa v'nishma, we would understand why it's two. But Chazal say, B'shosha Gedimu. And I say, when you say Nasa before Nishma, that's unbelievably gewaldig. We are willing to do Devar Hashem, whatever it may be. Whatever it is. We took upon ourselves Tariag Mitzvahs even before we knew what it involves. And that's crazy. A person applies to a job, doesn't know what the job is, and he tells his future employer, yeah, I'm willing to sign. Do you know what it's about? No, I don't care. Whatever it is, I'm doing it. Do you know how much your compensation is? No, I don't care. Whatever you want, give me. I would never hire a person like that. You're a crazy man. You can't do the job. Go elsewhere. Would anybody willing to sign a contract without knowing how much he's getting paid and without knowing what the job is about? And that is exactly what we did. Hekdim Nasa Nishma. We had no questions at all. Because we love the Kodesh Baruch Hu and we trust him. So a guy's a billionaire. And he calls his son, and he tells my boy, you want to work for me? And then I'm going to give you a job. He doesn't need to ask what it's about, and he's not even interested in how much I'm getting paid. I know, you're my dad. You know I'm not that smart. I'm not that great. Obviously you want to hire me because you want to give me parnasa. So he asks nothing. He says, Abba, what do you want me to sign? Great, thank you, I appreciate it. That was our situation. We trust the Kodesh Baruch Hu. He knows we're not that bright. He knows we won't really fulfill this job as we should. No one does. But he wants to be good to us. You know, he wants to give us. He wants to, so we have nothing to ask. What do we need to ask Shilas? It's our Father. All he wants is to give. So when you put Nasa before Nishma, it's great. But when you put Nishma after Nasa, it also becomes a different type of Nishma. It no longer means to hear. It means to listen and to try to understand. And that is Nishma Shala Achar Nasa. If they would say Nishma V'Nasa, Nishma would be, let's hear what it's about. And then we'll decide, do we want or not? But when you put Nishma after Naisa, that is Avraham Avinu asking, מתחילה אמרת לי כי ויצחק לכל הזולה. אחר כך אמרת לי, הלאה שם נהיה לו. עכשיו, Avraham Avinu wants to understand. He wants to understand, what was this about? What was number one? What was number two? And that is the Nishma Shalach HaNasa. And that is why B'Shoshek Dim Yisor Nasa LaNishma. They deserve two crowns and not one. One is for Chukas Pesach, the other is for Chukas Porah. One is for Nasa Lefnei Nishma, and the other one is for the Nishma Shala'acha Nasa. And that is Yiddishkeit. That is what we're all about. Serving, regardless of what it is, trusting a Kodesh Baruch Hu, whatever it is a Toivoseinu, it is for us. It is out of a Kodesh Baruch Hu's love for Klal Yisrael. And the Nishma Shala'acha Nasa is not just doing Ka'odam HaPareach Choyvoi, but trying to understand why and what and how we could better serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu. What are the mitzvahs all about? And that is what David HaMelech asked, Ki libi someh b'chokacho, Chukas Pesach and Chukas Porah. So have a beautiful Shabbos and have a great summer. So probably some of you will be counselors out there in camp. Tu bakashas. Remember every day that you're a Talmidim of a great yeshiva. Remember every day that you belong to Toras Chaim. And Toras Chaim comes together with Ahavas Chesed. Be korveya itim leTorah each and every day, and see to it and try to daven with a minyan 3 times a day. Those are the 2 fundamentals of a Ben Torah, wherever he is and whenever it is. Be korveya itim leTorah, daven with a minyan, and you should have a beautiful summer. I once said a moshel about Bein Hazmanim. 2 people were required to chop wood from morning to night, and both take their axe and they're chopping away. At the end of the day, Mr. B has a bigger pile than Mr. A. And Mr. A asks him, I wonder, I didn't stop chopping for 1 moment, and from the corner of my eye, sometimes I looked at you and you were just resting. So how come you have a bigger pile than I do? I chop more time than you. And Mr. B says, you didn't realize, but when I wasn't chopping wood, I was sharpening my axe. And that's why when I started chopping again, it went much better. Bein Hazmanim is about sharpening your axe. Bein Hazmanim is about and Bein Hazmanim is a wonderful opportunity to learn sugyas and things you don't have time to learn during the Zman. You know, in yeshiva you have a program, and you must adhere to the program. And I assume every Ben Torah has so many things you would like to learn, and he doesn't have time to learn during the Zman. So that's a great endeavor for Bein Hazmanim. Learn stuff that you would love to learn, and you don't have time throughout this Zman. So throughout the year, you hear shiurim from your Rosh Yeshivas. Bein Hazmanim is an opportunity. Maybe we're going to hear some other Magid Shir that are better than the ones we hear all year round. And you might find that Magid Shir that his shiurim are far more interesting than mine. And I'll be very happy with that. So take advantage of your Bein Hazmanim. Have a beautiful summer. And Be'ez Hashem, we should be Zoicha coming Chodesh Elul to come back to a new year with frische Koiches, and we should all be Zoicha Lahagdil Torah Ladina. Good Shabbos.